Hello everyone! In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about exactly what kind of work do technology consultants do, and this means like all different types of project types, and there's so many ways you can go about it. So in this specific video, again, just keep in mind I'm focusing on technology consulting, so you may have completely different kinds of experiences outside of other consulting, but for this video, we're going to be talking about the types of disciplines out there in technology consulting you can have work in, you can have types of projects, and even exactly what kind of travel requirements you may have. So the first off, we do want to talk about that you do actually have a staffing model. So I do want to mention that when it comes to projects, you're not necessarily guaranteed to have a project right off the bat. Most companies have a staffing model to really see exactly how it should this project be staffed, or maybe you want to be in a particular project that you want to be staffed in. So make sure to check out the video over here. So when it comes to the types of projects, I've actually briefly mentioned this in my why you should be a technology consulting video over here. And this is actually going to be specific when it comes to tech strategy, software implementations, and outsource work. So just to kind of dive deeper into this, so when it comes to tech strategy, this could mean digital strategy. It could be how to optimize your business with technology. There's so many different ways you can go about it. This is really more on the managerial side on exactly how to use technology to kind of leverage your business and kind of grow it. And then you also do have software implementations, which is what I do Workday financial software implementations, and this is actually more in terms of like what we're going to really go in today. Outsource work should also be following very similar kind of style to what I'm talking about today in terms of, since I've done software implementations for 2 years, this is mostly what I've heard from like all different types of software implementations, like what they've done. Let's just dive right into the types of projects that you're going to get. So first off, we have presentation based, and this is really going to be very closely to tech strategy, where you're trying to gather and analyze all this information about the client and try to really see what is the proper way or what is the best way that the client can actually utilize technology to kind of advance their business strategies and advance their business goals. So in this case, a lot of times it could be presentations of kind of like showing your findings and even providing a way of how to actually do things. I just want you to also keep in mind that when it comes to a lot of technology consulting firms, like for example, Accenture, but also some of the big four, they may have a specific business unit that is doing technology strategy or at least like management consulting. They do have end-to-end solutions, which means that like for example at Accenture, maybe at Accenture consulting or strategy, and they're the ones working with actual delivery, saying, okay, this is what we recommend for you, this is why, and this is what we would do. And then it would go to Accenture Technology, where I'm at, where like let's say maybe the recommendation was to do Workday financials, then we come in and actually try to do the implementation. So this is actually a way that a consulting companies can try to leverage the revenue and try to bring it in. So maybe sometimes the client will actually use a completely different consulting firm for a different area of the actual project, and this is completely on their discretion, but a lot of times they do stick with the same consulting firm because they understand it and they already built a relationship with the consulting firm. There's also the initial implementation, or at least like phase 0 or phase 1, whatever, where you're doing the entire thing from the very beginning. It's like typically a business or technology transformation where there was like nothing done previously. So let's say for example that you have a system that was like really archaic, like think green and black screens, like very, very old, where you may need to sit in a little old computer, and now you want to bring in cloud technology, or you want to bring in AI or data analytics tools instead of using Excel. This is really the main meat when it comes to software implementation, or at least in one of those outsourced projects, is that you're really doing a whole different transformation. The client never had exposure to anything that you're doing right now, and then this exactly is what I actually like the most, because you're starting from the ground up, and this is really where you can go deep into discovery sessions and design sessions to really make sure you can use design thinking to make sure that you can get the client to think outside the box and actually provide a good solution. Then you also have enhancement. I've actually mentioned in my video over here on the team structures that you may expect in a project, on like exactly how this can actually change the way it may be used. Because like if you have enhancements, there's already a system in place, but then everything in the statement of work or the SOW is done, or everything in the project is done, but then they do want to sign on like a change order or another SOW or another project to kind of tack on and add on and enhance. So you may have a specific project like that for enhancement. These tend to be smaller because typically they're not trying to like enhance everything, otherwise like your first project was probably a fail. Or you may be just trying to focus on like maybe what was in scope in the first phase, like basically was not possible. Now they have to bring in new resources or a new timeline, a new project, new budget specifically for these enhancements, and then you may have a smaller team, so they're kind of like a task force almost to kind of try to do what you're trying to do. For my case specifically, like maybe my client wants more reports, and then we have like the whole system done already, and this is where the client is already familiar with the system, and typically typically this means that they're already live. I've actually mentioned this in my work-life balance video over here that you may actually be working in the afternoons or weekends to make sure that your work that you're trying to put into their own system may actually have to be done when they're not working. So this is the kind of enhancement that you may have to do where you're going to be working a lot closely to the client and you actually could have a high potential of leading. So a lot of the times that I've had, for example, I have a project right now where I'm actually working on an enhancement, or at least like in this case phase 2, where they're trying to add all these enhancements and post-go live initiatives. This really means that they couldn't cover it originally and they're just trying to bring in a task force for this. And there's a resource out there that can have that time commitment. For example, me, I would actually be the lead of the functional side. I will still be working with like other teams that are trying to do other enhancements out there. If there's only a need for a few enhancements, they only need one person or maybe 2 people, but in my case it's just one person. And then that one person is going to be really trying to make that enhancement go live. Then you also have tech support. So this is typically maybe after everything is done and you still want to trickle away from the client as most comfortable as possible and maybe have a good transition so the client is prepared. You may have to offer after support or after work or tech support, all those kind of words out there. So like for example, when it comes to a Workday implementation, if you're done, then you're pretty much done. Like at this point, it's really just the client is supposed to do everything themselves. They're not supposed to be really they're not certified, they're not knowledgeable in this yet at least, but when they have tech support to come in at least, they can be the ones to kind of help out with tickets that maybe before we don't want the same exact resources because they want to be used for another software implementation, but we have tech support to kind of support that kind of handoff. So that way the client's a lot more prepared for a successful project. Then we also have staffing augmentation, which is not that common, not that obvious actually when it comes to an Accenture project at least. This is when Accenture actually sends resources to a project. So when it comes to staffing augmentation, I've actually seen this quite a bit, not really that common compared to all the other projects that I've heard about. And staffing augmentation means that Accenture is like essentially like a contractor where they're sending out contractors to a client and then they're kind of basically doing work for the client as if they're an employee. So let's say for example, in New York City parks, they need to do some renovations with their parks, but they don't have any people. So they may actually come to Accenture and say, hey, do you have anyone that's experienced in city design? So they may actually send someone in there. They'll have like an employee information and everything, but they'll still be technically an Accenture employee. So yeah, there's so many different ways that you can have a project out there. There's also many different companies that do different things. So in this case, so Accenture operations is actually pretty big here where there's a lot more staffing augmentation there. If there's a client that has a need for resources but they don't want to hire someone, they would hire Accenture for that. So we would have Accenture operations that would fulfill that need. That's not technically technology consulting, but it could also be relating to technology services, so just keep that in mind. Then when it comes to travel, there's like many different ways about this. There's the obvious traveling on site, but then there's also working from home, commuting to the client's site, and also relocation. So I didn't mention this in any previous videos, but there are actually cases where maybe you do have all these people in the US that are skilled in this particular field, like let's say Workday Financials. I like mentioning that because that's my field. So maybe there's only people in the US that are experienced in Workday Financials, but then maybe you have a client in Europe. Maybe Accenture in Europe does not have at least like the resources available for Workday Financials. So there may be a potential way that they have to relocate into Europe. So think about that. It's like when you relocate to Europe, you're technically still employed under Accenture in the US, but your location will change. They're also going to help you with your day-to-day life there, like food or all those kind of things, like in terms of per diem. So just keep that in mind that there are opportunities to relocate for that and still be employed under Accenture in the US. So depending on the actual project, a lot of times they're going to be remote as well. So that's where I mentioned in my work-life balance video where for me specifically, I was actually able to do a lot of work working from home, but also working on site. And this was really great for me because I can do a lot of the work working from home and playing with my cats. Like they're so cute. Like, why would you want to leave them alone? Like, oh. And then now that I'm fostering a cat, I'm just like, I want to stay home. But with quarantine, it's going to be a lot easier to stay home anyways. I think like a lot of companies are actually going to be staying home anyways because of COVID-19 and they want to be on the safer end. These are all what to expect in terms of a technology consulting project. There's so many different projects out there. I'm only listing the majority of the ones that I know about, but you may have a lot of them out there that are specific to maybe like a boutique firm or like even a small technology consulting firm. There's so many things out there, but these are what I think are actually pretty prevalent when it comes to the big consulting firms. Also, let me know down in the comments below if you're interested in seeing how technology consulting could be treated in a smaller or boutique firm, because they do things a lot more different when it it comes to bigger firms, just because when it comes to like resources and staffing and all those kind of things, like we're very dynamic in terms of like we need to use the best resources for what you need. But when it comes to a smaller company, it may be focused more on like, okay, what are the resources that are in specific this area or maybe this particular industry. There's so many things out there. Let me know down in the comments below if that's something that you're interested in. That's like all I have that in terms of like what kind of work that you can expect as a technology consultant, at least in terms of project work. And make sure to watch this video over here on what kind of work that you can expect at a consulting firm on a whole overall level. That will give you a bigger picture in terms of what to expect. To make sure to subscribe for more technology consulting and professional development content. Hi, Non. Like, she's actually not completely that great with other cats. Like, she does really well with Sora. But with the foster cat, she has actually been doing so well. Not hissing, not being a meanie. I'm so proud of you.